when you were looking for some answers, I mean, obviously you had to have answers right now at the point you had reached, but do you feel like you got the right care? I mean, obviously you're recovered and doing well, but I know I want to hear so much more about your journey. It's like I have a million questions, but do you feel like you had access to really good care for that once it was diagnosed?
I felt a lot of frustration, as I'm sure many of your listeners do, if they're on a similar journey or they have something undiagnosed, or that they're not presenting with a case that looks exactly textbook. And my case was not textbook either. And so when I was in the hospital, they said, look, we believe you have Guillain-Barré syndrome and we're going to start you on treatment right away, which in essence is to give me donor antibodies through plasma treatments to flush out the bad antibodies that were confused and fighting themselves, and replace those with healthy donor antibodies. And so that was a 6-day hospital stay to have that treatment administered. But then when I left the hospital and I wasn't able to go home because I could not lift my foot to climb one stair, much less the 17 stairs in my home that lead up to a bathroom where I would, need to bathe. And so I did, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, shortly, but I rehabbed at my mother's house. But during that time, I was getting infection after infection after infection. Now, keep in mind, this is during the lockdown. So people are not seeing one another. I mean, we're really just seeing immediate family. And I would have a mask on when my husband and my sons came to visit me, and I was still getting sick. So I was running, I think I counted around 30 days of fever. And I mean, the kind where you're just curled up in a ball and just convulsing, and a lot of body aches. And so here it is that my body is trying to come back from Guillain-Barré syndrome, but then also I keep getting these repeated infections. And so I was seeing an infectious disease doctor. I saw a rheumatologist. I was in close touch with a neurologist. I sought a second opinion from another neurologist. And so I was seeing several doctors, and then I wound up also going to a functional medicine doctor as well a bit later in my journey, and which revealed some another path for me that aided significantly in my recovery.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of functional medicine doctors. I see one myself because of the Hashimoto's and the chronic pain, so I can you're making me cheer in the background about that.
Well, they give you a completely different perspective from the main medical system, and also a different pathway to health, looking at your holistic profile. In deep health, as we talk about not only your symptoms, but also the causes of those symptoms, also your work life, your personal life, your family history, your gene history, all plays a part in it, in determining what kind of health status you have and your resiliency or potential resiliency to overcome that, as well as your mental performance, which are all things that are just not given cared attention for in the main medical system throughout the world. I think that trend is changing. I see it. We see it very obviously since we're in this. But it's something that the more mainstream public is becoming aware of. And honestly, for personalized healthcare, it is a way to be revealed.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way to say it.
And how much did you have to be your own advocate for all of this?
I had to do a lot more than I expected to do. And it was hard for me because when I left the hospital, the weakness was not only in my body, but it was also a complete lack of energy. So the energy had just been completely zapped, and it was energy physically as well as cognitive energy. Okay. And so I was not able to pick up a book and read it. It was absolutely beyond what I could do at that time. And it would be absolutely exhausting. So even getting assistance from my mom to help bathe me after that I would have to go lie back down again, after a 10-minute exertion like that. And so I was having to just do a few minutes at a time of looking at my records, getting online, looking at neurologists, printing out paperwork. And I really wanted to seek a second opinion because the doctor didn't seem completely sure. And he was telling me that there were some markers from my testing that didn't fully line up. And so I did seek help from the Shepherd Center, which is local to me in Atlanta. And they specialize in traumatic brain injury and neurological conditions. And I knew that that would be a very reputable second opinion. And so I did, get an advocate through my insurance company. I was doing all that research myself, but I would have to plan it during the day to just do a few minutes at a time and then put it down because it was too much at that time.
I know you talked a lot about doing a lot of visualization. What do you think really was the turning point in your healing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like I'm a goal-oriented person. I probably have always been that way to an extent. And I was 2 days out of the hospital, and a friend of mine had posted on Facebook about this organization called Project Athena. I'd never heard of it. And so I was on my phone and I went out and took a look at it, and I was immediately hooked and inspired. And this is a nonprofit that was created by Robin Benincasa, who's an elite world adventure racing athlete. And she created this organization to help survivors live their adventurous dreams. And so basically, you apply for a grant if you've been through a major medical setback. And if you are accepted, you're able to choose between these different adventurous journeys within the US. And you complete those journeys with other survivors and supporters and celebrate your comeback together. And when I read about that, I just decided right then in that moment that I was going to do this. And I saw some pictures from Zion National Park out in Utah, and I was blown away by the scenery. It's somewhere I've always wanted to visit. But this was an ultra marathon hike. So 45 miles over 2 days. And honestly, it was a ridiculous goal for me. I have been a little bit overweight, probably most of my adult life. I would sleep through my workouts. And when I was in second grade, I was getting a headache at the same time every day before the principal called my mom and said it was during PE class. And so I didn't like to sweat. I didn't want to be the center of attention. And so, I was not, before I was ill, somebody that you might identify as an athlete. And so, but that goal was something bigger than me. And it was something I'd never done. And I recognized that my daily goals were going to be something like, sit up for 10 minutes, be able to, stand in the shower for 10 seconds or what have you. And these were my goals, but those did not excite me. I needed something that I had a burning desire and excitement to go do. And the other thing was I was so overcome by the support of my family and my friends that I wanted to wrap this goal with an exercise in profound gratitude. And so I decided that somehow when I got to Zion, that I would dedicate each mile to someone who had uplifted me on my journey. And I wasn't able to write during that time, but as I was able to write a few words at a time, I started writing down names. And I journaled about that every day when I could. And I wanted to make sure to remember those who were touching me in that way and make sure to include them in this big, audacious goal.
I love that you even included the doctor that told you you can't do it after 3 years. And he's the one that laughed at you, and you even gave him the gratitude. It just shows your determination, but also your love and those that motivated you to go forward.
Thank you. And, in my work, I help other survivors to celebrate their own comebacks in mind, body, and spirit. And I'm doing a talk inside my Facebook group actually later this week about the beauty of the underdog. And the story of the interaction with my neurologist at that time is something that I'm going to speak more about during that. But really, it's choosing how to take those comments from others. Comments and feedback from other people are neither good or bad. It's how you choose to accept those. And so I told him what I was going to do. I was wrapping up an appointment in the office, and he left and left the room. And so instead of saying, I chose to see that as fuel. I chose to let that pour gasoline on my fire for doing this. And I just tried to tell myself, look, the biggest joy is going to be to write him and let him know what I've been able to accomplish, and to thank him for the role that he played in my recovery. And I was able to write him a letter letting him know that since I had last seen him, that I had hiked 500 miles, and that I was going to, complete this ultra marathon. And I dedicated a mile to him. And but I tell you, of the 40 plus calls, emails that I made, letters, that one was probably the most joyful of all of them, because he was part of that gasoline on the fire.